Thank
define
you.
discount rate in this context? Just to follow up, could you define discount rate, what you were just talking about in this
What
context?
discount rates are the rate at which the future is brought back to the present. So, for example, if the damage of climate change would be $100 100 years from now, at a 6% discount rate, that would be worth 25 cents today. So you get the point. At a discount rate in the Stern report, which was 1.3%, that would bring $100 back down to $25 today. So you sort of start seeing the implications of that. But I think Jeremy's point is absolutely right, is that if Nick Stern were here, and he's the vice chair of the commission and will be overseeing the economics of this program, what he would say is, number one, economists have tended to get it wrong, but number two, the role of the discount rate is increasing less important, because it turns out that today the relationship between climate action and the economy is much more interesting and possibly more positive than we thought before. Back there, yes.
Hi, I'm Whitney Ulick from the Christian Science Monitor, and I have a very narrow question for Mr. Calderon. Given the recent hurricanes in Mexico and sort of how it highlights how there can be policies in place, but they're not necessarily enacted on the ground, and how that can play out with natural disasters and things of that sort. I'm curious what you view as the priorities in Mexico, and how a report or a commission for a report like this might help avoid something like this in the future.
Thank you for your questions. I think it's very important. We most of the time I heard about the consequences of climate change in the future. I'm hearing the discussions about the rate of discount, for instance, talking about 100 years ahead. But my point is, we are already paying very high costs due to consequences of climate change. I know, and I want to be very careful of this, it is not easy or it's not clear to attribute one specific event to one specific source of climate change. But the fact is the climate is changing. Those changes in the climate are affecting dramatically some countries. Almost 130 Mexican people died last week because 2 hurricanes hit the country dramatically at the same time, one in the Pacific Sea and other in the Atlantic Sea. And we realize that as long the global warming is going ahead, changing the conditions in the sea, something is happening with hurricanes and damage dramatically. We spent billions of dollars during my tenure only in adaptation costs, repairing cities, helping people with their housing. So we are already paying very high costs related with this kind of events. So the discussions about what is going to happen in the future for some countries is like all discussion probably is going to be a little bit obsolete. So we are discussing about how much we are paying today for that. How many human lives we are losing today with these changes in the climate. So for me, it's completely relevant to say to the people that we need to act now in order to at least avoid in the future some of the consequences. But meanwhile, we are already paying the consequences of that in one way or another. And maybe the problem with these issues is that there is no political borders in this problem. I don't know if we are paying with the consequences of the lack of responsible public policies in somewhere else. I don't want to mention any countries, developed, big nations, very rich, like I don't remember what, but or others. But the point is, we are paying consequences, even from our own lack of actions in the past. So it is a very dramatic situation for us. I remember the floods I needed to attend as president, and I can imagine how much the people is suffering today. And we need to address that issue. And the problem is the poorest people are suffering the most because they are living in the worst places and sites besides the rivers, for instance, and so on. That situation is worsening the inequality. So we need to address the point, and we need to find a way in which we can combat poverty and at the same time to tackle climate change.
Good. Senator Timworth.
To all of you, thank you very much for doing this. This is a very welcome addition. I was wondering if it's worthwhile adding to your analysis and another maybe relatively simple factor. How much are those who are opposed to climate change going to benefit if nothing happens? There are a lot of deniers out there who obviously are faced with some choices. They are making a huge amount of money now for doing what they are doing now. Is it worthwhile doing an analysis to say that climate action is going to be winners and losers? We ought to have very clear understanding what some of those current winners have at stake in this, which gives us also, I think, some sense of what the politics of this are going to be.
Senator Worth, it is always good to have more opportunities for analysis offered to us. If anyone has suggestions of things we could take off the table, that would also be hugely, hugely welcome. So we cannot be naive about this whole agenda, and there's a political economy dynamic. There are, as Minister Eck said, winners and losers. We are we are going to try and understand, right, the transition economics, right, and we're going to try and understand elements of, if you will, what people describe as stranded asset risk, which includes exactly the point that you have made. There are different kinds of stranded asset risk. So there is the stranded asset risk of, if you will, those people who have carbon-intensive, highly profitable assets today. There is also the stranded asset risk of those people who have, if you will, massive exposure to climate to climate factors over the years ahead. So what we will do is try and understand this, and we will try and put some facts on the table and see what we can learn.
Minister Eck.
Yes, what we see is that in the international finance sector, there's already a lot of global companies who are doing these kind of analyses, and I think this is really, really important. We see the Citibank has done it. We're on our way in Sweden with the pension funds to have this discussion. It's only starting, but I think it's really important. And from my point of view, history is always changing, and I think we have a major shift, or are in the midst of a major shift right now. And of course, that makes a global report on the new climate economy even more interesting, because what we've seen right now, what we face, will bring other business models, and to have more knowledge about this, I think, will also be a good thing for all those who own stocks or shares or big companies or taking the investment decisions. For me, it's having more knowledge is always better, and that's why I think this global commission is truly worthwhile and will bring good results.
Good.
You allow me, Andre, but very passionate about this. But I remember the experience in Mexico related with NAFTA, Senator. The question was more or less like that. So what about the winners and the losers? Of course, there will be winners and losers, but our task was to explore at aggregate level what was going to happen in Mexico with NAFTA. And the outcome, almost 20 years later, it's amazing. So we conclude that it was going to be very positive at aggregate level, and we needed to find some way to support people in the loser side, if I can say that, and to get the benefits of the winner side. But at aggregate level, it was going to be a positive outcome of NAFTA, and that's exactly what happened. some way I can see it is, we can analyze in the report what could be all those sectors would we consider winners, and all those sectors we consider losers. But I want to see there at aggregate level that the right policies for these economy and climate, or green economy, or whatever he wants to call it, is going to be positive at aggregate level. And we can suggest very specific public policy in order to address the so-called possible loser sectors of companies. And finally, one point related with people who get a lot of benefits and are skeptical about that. If 5 years ago we were here seated explaining this project, and suddenly Jeremy or Andrew say that there will be, for all those that are skeptical here in Wall Street, there will be a terrible hurricane passing through 5th Avenue and something like that. They say, well, you are absolutely crazy. But that kind of things are happening. So I wonder if the hurricane sands provided, besides the water, a little bit of reflection of this problem to the people in Manhattan and New York City.
Very good. That's actually a very good point on which to end, unless anyone has got an urgent final question they want to. One more then.
Yeah, just finally, you've got a year, you're presenting it next September, but actually to present it and refine it, you've got probably 4 or 5 months to actually do the work. What can you really achieve in that such a short period of time?
Well, firstly, while you're sort of, the world has to finalize the negotiations on the new global climate regime till 2015. That's about UN world record time. So, yes, it's a short time, but that's the time we have.
Let me tell you, I have seen Jeremy working. I'm absolutely sure that he will make it, and he and his team. But let me tell you, we have a set of institutions here, some of them present, related with climate issues. You will see the list of the institutions participating, and I think they have a lot of work already done. And putting all of these efforts together, I think we will get, as you are absolutely right. We have 1 year starting now, but we have probably 6 months in order to have like a clear draft about our hypothesis at least. But we will work really hard on it.
Look, I don't think there's a trade-off here between doing excellent work and doing it with a real sense of a deadline. And I think most of us, much of our best work, I think you work to deadlines all the time.
I could write a report in 3 hours.
Probably, we will welcome your input to that.
Great. Thank you very much. Everyone has busy days ahead of them. President Calderon, any final word from you?
Thank you.
Good.
Thank you for all your.
Thank you all very much for coming, and we look forward to working with you.